Yes, you don't need to spend years to learn a language. In this video I'm gonna share with you my secret method on how I learn languages within 24 hours or sometimes even less. By using this method, I learned and now can speak 4 foreign languages: English, Spanish, Portuguese and Italian. Parlo italiano. And at one point I even learned to speak an indigenous Mexican language that's called Maya. And I did it in just one day of studying, which right now I almost forgot because I don't have anyone to practice it with because I moved out of the region. And I also speak my native language, which is Russian. Да, я говорю по-русски, блядь. You might think it's a miracle or that it's impossible to learn a language in just 24 hours, but I think a bigger miracle is to study a language for months or years and still not being able to speak it or communicate in it. And that used to be me, so I know that feeling. But in this video, I'm gonna show you in detail how easy it is to learn languages and how fast it can be if you use the formula that I'm gonna present to you in a second. So me, I always liked learning languages, but I felt that the way they were taught in school was just too slow and too ineffective. I had 8 years of English in school, but I still couldn't have a simple conversation. Neither could my classmates. So I thought that learning languages was really difficult and that it takes many years to get any good. But then a few years after I finished school, I got lucky. I came across a video course by Russian polyglot Dmitry Petrov. It was called English in 16 hours. And I was so blown away by his system that I adapted it, added my touch. First I learned English, then Spanish, Portuguese and then Italian. And even Maya. Incaba, Miguel. And actually every next language, it feels easier to learn because you already know the algorithm. Now, can you become fluent in a language in just 24 hours? Become fluent? Probably no. I'll soon make a separate video on how to become fluent fast, so stay tuned. But what you can do in 24 hours is you can get to know the language well, learn the structures, lose the fear of speaking it, and learn to speak it with confidence and understand the native speakers. By the way, 24 hours doesn't have to be one full day, although it is possible, and I did learn Maya this way, but it can be just 1 hour per day for 24 days. To learn a language fast, you will need motivation. Why do you want to learn the language? What's your motivation? It could be movies, it could be music, it could be love, friendship. Maybe you could get promoted if you knew another language. Because honestly, language is not just grammar rules, and it's not a dictionary. Language is culture, traditions, mentality, characters, music, and the way of speaking and thinking. To learn a language properly, it's not enough to learn the words. You need to feel your presence in the environment. At the end of the day, it's a new view of life, and you just need to hit that switch in your brain. So you need an image. Something that connects you to the language. What do you see? What do you imagine? You can even pause this video right now and think about it, because it's very important for immersing into the language. And every language has a structure, schemes that we need to learn and memorize so that they become automatic. Just like when you drive, dance or cook, you already know what to do without even thinking about it. And here's what you need to do to learn a language. First, you need to stop being afraid of it and start enjoying it. And second, make automatic the structures and the core of the language, to which we can then add up more things. And those structures that I'm talking about, they're not harder than the multiplication table. You don't need to memorize thousands of words. Every language has certain words that we use every day, no matter the country, no matter the language, no matter your social status. Typically those are 300 to 400 words, 50 to 60 of which are verbs. And the verb actually is the core of every language. It's the base of every language. That's why when I learn languages, I start with learning the verbs and the way they conjugate. And logically, using the verbs, you can speak about the present, the future, and the past. Also, we can assert something, deny something, and ask something. So here we have 9 possible options. Of course, with the languages like Greek, Arabic, Asian languages, you need to first study the alphabet, which is usually not very difficult, and it might take a little bit more time to figure out how everything works. And you can also learn the pronunciation and the way the language sounds by using Google Translate. But let's get back to the verbs. I'm gonna be showing you this method by using 2 languages, English and Spanish. First, I pick about 10 commonly used regular verbs and conjugate them in the present, past and future, and in the positive, negative and question with all the pronouns. The pronouns in the language you're learning can be different from the language you're speaking. Okay, we take love, hate, live, die, work, rest, open, close, start, finish, and want. Then I go on Google, find the irregular verbs of the language and do the same with them. Irregular verbs, they conjugate differently because they are used the most, and it's believed that that's why with time they change the past form. So I would be studying the language for 1 hour each day, so 24 days, and each day I would add new verbs, both regular and irregular, to the equation, spending 3 to 10 minutes to run the verbs through this graph so that it becomes automatic. Now I'm gonna expand the possibilities and options even further. We have two forms of pronouns. The first ones respond to the question who, the others to the question for who, from who, to who. Just like in this graph. I see you, yo te veo. You see me, we see her, they see us. With these verbs that I just learned and with these two graphs, conjugation and pronouns, I now have approximately 5,000 combinations. And this is exactly what allows you to speak fluently. She didn't see me, he saw her. I know him, they know me. So now having this, when we learn new words, we're not only learning words, we're learning new combinations. Okay, now let's talk conversations. The fundamentals of a conversation are question and answer. So the next step when I learn languages is I learn the question words, which is usually a very short list. They are what, why, who, where, when, how. And you can even throw how much in there. And that's not only English or Spanish. Almost all languages have this structure. So you can just use this video and adapt it to learn the language you want to learn. Now that I learned the question words, I can start asking questions like what did you eat? ¿Qué comiste? Where do you work? ¿Dónde trabajas? Now, very important thing. When we learn a language, the first thing we need to learn is to talk about ourselves. To be able to say something about yourself. Who am I? What do I do? Where do I live? What I like, what I don't like. I also like to play out conversations in my head. Let's say I meet my friend in the street. What's the conversation gonna be like? What will I say to him and what will he say to me? Hi, how are you? What did you do today? I also like to write down the phrases that I typically use in a day and translate them. And I use Google Translate to hear the pronunciation of those phrases in the language I'm learning. And you can apply this to any situation. Restaurant, supermarket, school, friends. Maybe now you start thinking, yeah, that's enough for me. Now I know I can speak the language, but wait, there's a lot more. Then I actually learned the prepositions to be able to fully express myself, such as in, to, from, at, on. Now I can say I work in a bar or I live in Mexico. So we have the core, which is the verbs, and each and every time we add up even more. And actually learning languages, the sky is the limit. You can add up so much. And one of my favorite things to learn in any language is the filler words. In English they would be well, so, like, you know. The filler words just to fill the pauses, fill the gaps between the words, so that you don't sit there just saying and it's funny, it's actually one of my favorite parts in every language because every country has different filler words. Well, you can Google them, but the best way to learn them for me is when you go to a country where they speak the language and you talk to the people and you hear them saying this, you hear them speaking those words. And sometimes they don't even notice that they repeat those words over and over and over again. I went to Mexico, I was just laughing. People would say, o sea, bueno. Well, the crazy part is all that I just gave you, all the information that I just gave you, you can learn all of this in just a few hours. Google Translate by just copying this method that I'm giving you right now in this video. So what's the next step? Well, we learned conjugating verbs in present simple, past simple, future simple. Now logically I would learn the same but with present continuous, future continuous and past continuous. I'm not gonna take on present perfect, future perfect, past perfect in this video, or even past perfect continuous, but you get the idea. So you do the same conjugations with the verbs you choose, but now in the continuous tense. Not all languages have it, by the way. the continuous tense. You gotta check it about the language you're learning. For example, when I was learning Maya, they don't have it. They don't have it, and they have different types of future and past. It's a little bit different, but it's all similar, it's all kind of the same in every language. Well, then I learned how to say phrases with two verbs together, like I want to eat, yo quiero comer, or I like to travel, mi gusta viajar. In Italian, io voglio mangiare. And remember when I said that we need to learn to talk about ourselves? Well, for that, very useful would be to learn possessive pronouns, so that you could say your name and ask people their names. If you don't know, possessive pronouns are my, your, or mine, yours, they, their. Actually now, having learned all this, you can now start talking to people. And most importantly, start talking about yourself. I'm a writer, I live and work in New York, I'm 25 years old, I like movies, I like to listen to rock music. Also now you don't have to go to a country where they speak the language. There's a lot of online applications where you can find people who are willing to exchange. It's called language exchange. You can find people online and do video calls with them. Okay, so now we got the fundamentals. So what's next? Next, I start filling up the gaps in my knowledge of the language. How do I say hello, goodbye, thank you, you're welcome? How do I say sorry? How do I order food? Yo quiero una hamburguesa, por favor. How do I use the adjectives? What are the adjectives? How do they change? How do you say big, bigger, the biggest, good, better, the best? And I typically just write down the most commonly used adjectives and just translate them. How do you compare something? How do you say, for example, this shirt is better than the other one? Then I learn everything about time. How do I say today, tomorrow, yesterday, now? How do I say day, week, month, year? How do I say in 3 days? Or how do I say 3 days ago, or before, after, last, next? How do they say time in that country, in that language? 5 o'clock in English, in Spanish, a las 5. How do I say days of the week, names of the months, seasons of the year? I mean, this alone is already enough to have more or less simple conversations with people. Of course, you're not gonna be able to watch the movies in the language without subtitles. It takes much more time to get to that level. But at this level, you would definitely feel confident enough to go to the country where they speak the language and practice it with the locals. However, there are still more things that I think are very important to learn, and things that you can still learn within a 24-hour period, which I'm gonna explain right now so that you can apply them to whatever language you're learning. You would need to learn the word would or its variation in the language you're studying, because it's really a word of politeness. You don't want to be walking around saying I want, I want, I want. Obviously, it's much nicer to say I would, and people would look at you differently. You would look better in the eyes of the people. Also, very important words to learn: can, should, have to. They're used all the time, but they're different in every language and have different rules and different conjugations. Some useful phrases: how much, how many, cheap, expensive. If you go to another country and trying to buy something and don't want to be scammed, words like much, little, many, few. I know at this point you're probably tired of watching this video, but I still have a few things to tell you before I go, which are also very important if you study in a language. Like these words, they have full, partial and negative meanings. The first group of words is regarding people: everybody, somebody, nobody. Things: everything, something, nothing. Space: everywhere, somewhere, nowhere. Time: always, sometimes, never. Obviously, words like left, right, straight, back. Next thing I learned is how to say about my state or my feelings. I'm tired, I'm sick, I'm hungry. Also how to say there is, there are, how to say this, that, this, those, and so on and on and on. I mean, you can go forever, but you get the idea. So now let's summarize it. The core of everything is to learn the conjugations of the verbs with the graph that I showed you earlier, and keep adding up more and more each and every time until it becomes automatic for you, like driving, cooking or dancing. And then each time you add more verbs, more nouns, more adjectives, you play in your head the hypothetical situations that could happen, or try to imagine the everyday situations you're in and imagine them in the language you're trying to learn. Translate those dialogues. Translate those phrases. Imagine going to the country where they speak the language. What's the first thing you're gonna say to the person that you're gonna approach? How will your conversation play out? Just be creative about it. I think the most difficult thing about learning a language is not knowing where to start and what to start with. Now you know, now you have the system. When I discovered the system, learning languages became so much fun and it was not a struggle anymore. And I hope now, after watching this video, learning languages is not a struggle for you either. The main thing I would say is you gotta stay consistent. Even 10 to 20 minutes a day is gonna be better than nothing. And I'm gonna make a separate video on how to become fluent in a language very fast. But for now, if you like this video and you found this video helpful, useful, please leave a like, please subscribe. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you next time.